The Whisper Behind the Tomb, Manila North Cemetery. I never believed in ghosts. Not really, not until that afternoon in Manila North Cemetery. It was around October when I volunteered to assist a heritage tour inside the cemetery. I'm a photography student, and the idea of capturing old tombs and forgotten architecture fascinated me. The Manila North Cemetery, with its maze of mausoleums and overgrown trees, felt more like a forgotten city than a burial ground. Beautiful, eerie, but peaceful, or so I thought. That day, the tour ended just before sunset. The sky was burning orange, and most of the guests had gone. I lingered a bit longer, hoping to get a few more shots near the older mausoleums at the far end, places people rarely visited. As I moved through the quiet alleys, I heard it, a whisper. At first, I thought it was just the wind brushing against the trees, but then I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me." I stopped. It was faint, like someone struggling to speak through thick glass. I looked around, no one, just tombstones, cracked angels, and the deep shadows of fading light. I shrugged it off, assuming it might have been an echo from the street. I raised my camera and snapped another photo. "Help me." Again, closer, desperate. I turned and faced a large white tomb, the marble weathered and slightly cracked. The whisper came from inside it. I could feel the voice vibrate through the stone. My heart pounded. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I stepped closer and placed a hand on the cool marble slab. That's when I felt it. A tap on my shoulder. I spun around, no one, not a soul. Suddenly, a chill crept up my spine and I couldn't move. For a brief moment, it felt like something was behind me, breathing down my neck. I dropped my camera and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the front gates, panting, drenched in sweat. Later that evening, I told the story to one of the older caretakers. His face turned grim. "You shouldn't have gone near that tomb," he said. I asked why. He told me the story of the man buried there, an old mortician who supposedly died in his sleep inside his home. But during the wake, strange things happened. The body would shift positions. Sometimes faint knocks came from the coffin, but everyone dismissed it as grief hallucinations. It wasn't until years later, during a routine crypt repair, that workers discovered deep scratches inside the lid of the coffin. He was buried alive. They resealed the tomb, but ever since then, people report whispers, taps, and even cries for help from that spot. Some say his soul never left, still trapped, still begging someone to open the tomb. I never returned to that part of the cemetery again. But sometimes, when I look at the photo I took before the whisper, I notice something strange. In the background behind the tomb, a blurry face pressed against the marble, mouth wide open, screaming. The Grave Child Who Follows, La Loma Cemetery. They say cemeteries are peaceful places, quiet, calm, a resting ground for the dead. But for me, La Loma Cemetery in Manila will never be just a graveyard. It will always be the place where something attached itself to me. It was back in 2007. I was 17, a skinny high schooler trying to make some extra money during summer break. My uncle worked part-time cleaning and repainting tombs, especially during peak months like Undas. He asked if I wanted to help. "Easy work," he said. "A little paint, some wiping, a little prayer." The first few days were uneventful. Most of the cemetery was old but well kept. Mausoleums lined the narrow pathways, their owners long gone, but the dead, well, they didn't bother anyone, or so I thought. On the third day, around 4 in the afternoon, the sky was starting to turn gold with sunset. We were wrapping up for the day, when I noticed something strange. Just a few meters away, sitting quietly on top of a concrete tomb, was a little boy. He looked about 6 or 7 years old. He was wearing a red shirt and brown shorts, and he had messy black hair that covered part of his forehead. His feet dangled off the edge of the tomb, and he was just watching me. At first I thought he was someone's kid, probably waiting for a parent. I waved at him, but he didn't wave back, no reaction. Just those eyes, deep, hollow, unblinking. Something about the way he stared made my stomach twist. It was too still, too silent. Then I blinked, and he was gone. I asked my uncle, "Did you see the kid earlier?" "What kid?" he said without looking up. "There's no one else here." That night, as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was behind me. I kept turning around, but the narrow streets were empty. I felt it, eyes watching me, footsteps in sync with mine. Still, I chalked it up to paranoia. Maybe I just spooked myself. But that was only the beginning. At around 3 in the morning, I woke up with a heavy chest. My room was cold, unnaturally cold. My dog Turo, who usually slept soundly, was growling at the corner of my room. I sat up and followed his eyes. There, standing in the far corner, was the boy. Same red shirt, same brown shorts, but now his face wasn't blank, it was grinning. A twisted, unnatural grin that stretched too far across his face. His eyes were completely black. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. Turo barked furiously, and just like that, the boy vanished, like smoke in the air. The next day, I told my uncle I wasn't going back. He didn't question me. Instead, he looked serious. "You saw the boy, didn't you?" I just nodded. He sighed and lit a cigarette. "That kid, he's been seen before. I've heard other workers talk about him. They say he died during a family dispute, burned alive in one of the tombs. His parents were fighting over inheritance, and he got trapped inside a mausoleum that was set on fire." He paused. "They never found all his remains, and sometimes he chooses someone to follow." I immediately went to a local albulario, desperate for help. She told me to bring offerings, a white candle, rice, and a child's toy. I placed them at the cemetery's entrance and said a prayer. That night the cold didn't return. My dog slept soundly. The boy was gone. But even now, sometimes when I pass by La Loma, I feel a tug, like something is watching, waiting. And I wonder, did I really get rid of him? Or is he just waiting to come back? Voices from the Empty Grave. Davao City. They say Holy Week is when spirits are most active. Back in 2018, my cousin Eric and I were deep into urban exploring and ghost hunting. We had been visiting abandoned buildings, old churches, and cemeteries around Mindanao. That week, we decided to check out a small, half-forgotten cemetery in Davao City, somewhere near a rural barangay where few people go anymore. The place was quiet, too quiet. No flowers, no candles, just cracked tombs, weeds growing through broken cement, and a heavy air that clung to your skin. Even the wind seemed to avoid that place. Eric brought his spirit box, a cheap device he ordered online that scans radio frequencies, supposedly allowing spirits to speak through the static. I always thought it was just noise, but that day, something happened that I still can't explain. We set the box on top of one of the unmarked graves. It was just a slab of concrete, no name, no date, just forgotten. Eric asked, "Is anyone here with us?" At first, nothing, just static and the occasional blip of a random radio station. Then it cleared. A woman's voice came through, weak but distinct, "I'm here." We looked at each other, stunned. I asked, "What is your name?" No response. Eric tried again, "What do you want?" There was a pause, then she answered, "Buried but forgotten." Her voice sounded sad, not angry, just tired, like someone left alone for too long. I felt this heavy pressure on my chest, like I had to cry for someone I didn't even know. I knelt beside the grave, staring at the rough cement, and asked gently, "Are you at peace?" The static crackled again, then she whispered, "No prayers, no name." That's when I noticed something strange. The cement slab had deep scratches along the edges, like fingernails clawing from the inside. I felt nauseous. Eric stood up and said, "We should go." But just as we turned to leave, the voice came back, louder this time, almost pleading. "Don't forget me." Then silence. The spirit box died. The batteries were full, but it just shut off. We didn't speak the whole ride back. The next day, we returned with flowers and a candle. We said a prayer. I wrote a name on paper and placed it there, "To the unknown soul." When I came back a week later, the candle was untouched, but the paper was gone. In its place was a single white sampaguita flower. We never heard the voice again. But every time I pass that cemetery, I leave a flower, just in case she's still waiting. Crying Woman by the Cross. Bacolod Public Cemetery. My name is Elle, and this happened in 2018, just a few days after All Saints' Day. I had gone to Bacolod to visit my grandmother's grave, like I always did whenever I got the chance to go home. That cemetery, it's old, really old. Some of the tombs there are cracked, unmarked, and half sunken into the ground. It was around 4 in the afternoon. The sun was starting to go down, casting long shadows across the graves. The scent of melted candles and wilted flowers still lingered from the previous days. I brought a few marigolds, lit a candle, said a prayer, and sat quietly by my Lola's grave. That's when I heard it. A soft, heart-wrenching sobbing. At first, I thought it was just another visitor, maybe someone mourning a loved one, but the crying, it wasn't normal. It sounded too close, yet too distant, like it was echoing from under the earth. I stood up and looked around. That's when I saw her. A woman, kneeling by the huge cement cross at the center of the cemetery. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, the kind you'd see in antique photographs. Her long black hair covered most of her face, and she rocked back and forth, crying into her hands. Something about her didn't feel right. She was too still. Her back never moved as she breathed. There was no sound of her footsteps before she appeared there, and then, without thinking, I called out to her. "Kate, are you okay?" She stopped crying. Slowly, her head lifted. Her hair parted just enough to show a glimpse of her face, and that's when I saw it. Her eyes were gone, just black hollow sockets like burned holes. Her cheeks were sunken, and her mouth twisted into a broken, unnatural grin. I screamed. I backed away so fast I tripped over a headstone. When I got up and looked again, she was gone. Completely vanished. I ran straight to the exit, shaking. The caretaker by the gate saw my face and asked if I was okay. I told him what I saw. He didn't look surprised. "She's always there," he said, almost too casually. "The woman by the cross." He told me the story. Decades ago, a woman waited for her fiancé to return from war. Every day she came to the cemetery, sitting by that cross, believing he was still alive. But when she found out he had died and was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere, she took her own life, right under that very cross. Since then, people say her ghost appears there, still waiting, still crying. Some see her. Others only hear the weeping, but one thing is certain: the moment you acknowledge her, she notices you. And sometimes she follows. Ever since that day, I've never gone back alone. I always bring someone with me, and whenever I pass that cross, I make sure never to look too closely. Because I know she's still there, waiting. The Procession of the Dead, Tarlac Cemetery. I didn't believe in ghost stories. I was a soldier for most of my life, seen war, real fear, real death, but nothing prepared me for what I saw that night in Tarlac. This happened in 1998. I was visiting a longtime friend who lived near the public cemetery in Tarlac City. We were both in our early 60s and liked to drink and talk about the old days. That night, he invited me to stay over since it was getting late. His house was old, made of wood and nipa, with a window facing the cemetery. I remember the time clearly. 2:12 a.m. I know because I glanced at my watch after waking up from a strange dream. I don't know what woke me, but I felt cold, like something wasn't right. Then I heard it. Footsteps, lots of them, but not fast like a crowd, slow, rhythmic, like a funeral procession. I thought maybe it was just people walking down the street, but who the hell would parade through a cemetery at 2 in the morning? I peeked out the Capiz window, and that's when my blood froze. There, on the narrow dirt path between the tombs, was a line of people. Except they weren't alive. Their faces were pale, skin sagging, some with open wounds or broken jaws. A few had no faces at all, just empty skin. One woman carried a baby with no head. Another man walked without legs, dragging himself forward with his arms. At the front of the line was a priest. He wore old, moth-eaten robes and his skin was gray. His face, it looked half-burned. He held up a broken cross and mumbled in Latin. And the worst part, there was no sound. No birds, no dogs barking, just the shuffle of feet and the rustling of dead leaves. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. I wanted to scream. I wanted to close the window, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. My friend, snoring on the bannig beside me, didn't wake up. I watched the procession disappear behind a mausoleum. When I finally looked away and back again, they were gone. The next morning, I told my friend what I saw. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and said, "You saw them." "Who?" I asked. "The ones who never moved on," he said. "Every year, during this week of the dead, they walk. They reenact their burials, over and over. Some were buried with anger, some with curses, others with unfinished business." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was dreaming, maybe I drank too much. But the footprints in the dirt road the next morning told me otherwise. They were there. Every year since then, I avoid Tarlac during that week. I'd rather not see the dead remember how they died. Because I think, someday, I might be in that procession too. The Laughing Tombstone, Cavite Public Cemetery. Let me tell you something I've never told anyone before. This happened back when I was 16, young, reckless, and always looking for a good scare. We lived in a small town in Cavite, just a few streets away from the old church and its ancient cemetery. The place had been around since the Spanish era. Moss-covered tombs, cracked statues of saints, and crooked crosses stuck out like broken teeth from the earth. If there was ever a place haunted by the past, that was it. One Friday night, a group of us boys, me, Jerome, Wyko, and Tun, dared each other to do something stupid: spend the night inside the cemetery. Not just anywhere inside, but beside the infamous laughing tombstone. They say it belonged to a man who went mad before he died. Laughed at his own funeral, even as he lay dying. Some say he cursed everyone, including his family, because he believed the world was a joke. After he was buried, people claimed to hear laughter near his grave during stormy nights, hysterical, guttural laughter that echoed across the stones. Of course, we didn't believe any of it. We were boys, what did we know? We entered the cemetery just after 10 p.m., armed with flashlights, cheap snacks, and a single bottle of gin. We laughed off the fear. We found the grave without much trouble. The tombstone was half buried, cracked down the middle, as if someone had tried to erase it from memory. But his name, Alejandro Y. Reyes, 1918 to 1946, was still faintly etched on the surface. "Bet you won't sleep next to it," Wyko taunted. I puffed out my chest. "Watch me." I laid my cardboard mat right beside the tombstone, my head inches from the cracked marble. "Good night, Lolo Alejandro," I joked, trying to sound brave. The others laughed. For a while, everything was fine. We played cards, shared stories, and even dared each other to walk around the darker corners of the cemetery. But when the clock struck midnight, the air shifted. Suddenly, everything got cold, and I mean unnaturally cold. Our laughter died down, even the crickets stopped chirping. Then it started. A laugh. At first, we thought it was Tun playing a prank, until we saw him frozen, flashlight shaking in his hand. The sound came again, louder. A strange mix of a giggle and a wheeze, like someone trying to hold in a laugh but couldn't anymore. It was coming from the ground, from the tombstone. I sat up, heart pounding. The laughter grew deeper, manic. The tombstone began to rattle, literally shake, as if someone was laughing from beneath it. I felt the ground beneath me thump once, twice, as if something inside was moving. Then a crack formed down the stone, a piece chipped off, and I swear to you, I felt a cold hand brush against my ankle. I screamed, jumped up, and ran. So did the others. We didn't even look back. We never went near that cemetery again. The next morning, the old caretaker told my dad that we were lucky. He said that tomb had been sealed again and again over the years, but the spirit never rested. He died laughing, he said, and he wants the world to laugh with him, forever. Ever since that night, I sometimes hear laughter in my dreams, same wheezy, choking laugh, and every time, I wake up with cold hands on my ankle. The Girl with the Candle. San Pablo City Cemetery. I was 16 when it happened, old enough to not believe in ghost stories, or so I thought. It was All Saints' Day, and my family went to San Pablo City Public Cemetery to visit the graves of our relatives. As usual, the place was crowded, candles flickering in every direction, the scent of melting wax mixed with flowers and burnt incense. People prayed, laughed, ate. It almost felt like a fiesta among the dead. After helping my mom clean up my grandfather's grave, I offered to find my aunt's resting place. It was located somewhere deeper in the cemetery, near the older section, where the tombs were cracked and the names faded with time. I took a small flashlight with me just in case, since dusk was creeping in fast. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe around 10 or 11 years old, standing a few meters ahead. She was holding a small white candle, the flame burning steadily despite the wind. She wore an old white dress that looked like it belonged to another time, like something from the 1950s. Her hair was long and straight, and she had a slight smile on her face. Something about her didn't seem strange at the time. In fact, I felt calm. She turned to look at me and said, "This way." I blinked. "Are you visiting someone too?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just turned around and started walking. I assumed she was leading me toward the newer graves, so I followed. She walked slowly but always stayed a few steps ahead, guiding me like she knew the place better than I did. I remember thinking she might be the caretaker's daughter or a local who came every year. After about 5 minutes, we passed a crooked iron gate into an older section. The grass was taller, and some tombs were covered in moss. It was quiet here, too quiet, no candles, no people, just the crunch of dried leaves under my feet, and that flickering candle ahead of me. Then she stopped. Right beside an old tree with a cracked tomb beneath it, she turned around and looked at me, still smiling. I stepped closer, but just as I reached out, she vanished. No smoke, no sound, just gone like she was never there. I stood frozen, the hair on my arms standing straight. My flashlight started flickering. That's when I realized I had no idea where I was. The way back was swallowed by shadows. My hands trembled. I tried calling for help, but my voice sounded muffled, as if the air itself was pressing down on me. It took me almost 20 minutes to find my way back. When I finally reached the main path, I spotted a group of visitors and rushed toward them like a madman. They looked at me strangely, probably wondering why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Later that night, I told my cousin what happened. Her eyes widened. "You saw the girl with the candle?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "You know her?" She swallowed hard. "She's been seen by people since the 1980s. They say she helps people who are lost, but not everyone comes back. According to the old caretakers, she was a young girl who died in that very cemetery during World War II, killed in an air raid while waiting for her parents to return. They buried her under that tree. Every year, she shows up on All Saints' Day guiding the living, perhaps looking for her family. Or maybe just wanting someone to walk with her, forever." The Coffin That Moves, Antique Province. I never believed in haunted graves until I witnessed it myself. This happened in Antique, where my mother's family is from. We visit every year during Undas to pay respects to my grandparents. Their tomb is right beside an old family crypt, one that's rarely visited. The cement walls are chipped, moss-covered, and there's a rusted iron gate that creaks even in the slightest wind. But what's strange about that crypt isn't how it looks, it's what happens inside. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I was just 15. My uncle opened the small vault of our grandparents' tomb for cleaning, and out of curiosity, I peeked through the gaps into the neighboring crypt. That's when I saw it. The coffin inside was turned sideways like it had moved. I didn't think much of it. Maybe an earthquake, maybe it was placed that way. But the year after, it was upside down, and that time the cement seal hadn't been broken. No one had touched it. My uncle grew pale when he saw it. He told me this had been happening for years. We tried sealing it, cement, padlocks, even nailing the coffin in place, he said. But every time we come back, the coffin changes position. I asked him why they never had it exorcised or blessed. He just looked away and muttered, "Because we know why it's happening." Apparently, the man buried in that coffin wasn't supposed to be there. He died under mysterious circumstances, fell from a tree, they say, but there were whispers in the barangay that he was pushed by his own brother, over land inheritance. When he died, no one came to claim the body except the very brother accused of killing him, out of guilt or shame maybe. That same brother died a year later of a sudden stroke. Some said it was karma. But the two were buried side by side, in the same crypt. That's when the disturbances began. The coffin started shifting. One time it was found at a 90-degree angle, as if trying to turn away. Another time the lid was slightly cracked, yet there were no signs of forced entry. It scared my cousins so badly, they refused to go near that side of the cemetery. The last straw was 3 years ago. When we came back for All Souls' Day, the coffin was found pushed completely to one side, leaning against the cement wall as if trying to get out. That's when my uncle finally brought an albulario. The old man didn't even step into the crypt. He stood outside, whispered a few prayers, then placed a bowl of water on the lid of the tomb. The water rippled violently, as if something beneath was knocking from inside. He told us the spirit was restless, angry. It didn't want to be beside the one who caused its death. It would never settle until it was buried separately. So that's what they did. My uncle and the barangay helped exhume the coffin and buried it in a new grave, far from the family plot, under a belet tree of all places. Some said it was disrespectful, but the albulario said it was the only place where the spirit could rest undisturbed. Since then, the coffin hasn't moved. But I still dream about it sometimes. I see it rocking slowly in the dark, scratching against the stone, trying to tell the world the truth even from beyond the grave. Watcher on the Wall. Ilocos Norte Cemetery. They say the dead rest in peace. But in Ilocos Norte, there's one cemetery where the dead aren't the ones you should be afraid of. It's the Watcher who never rests. This happened to me back in 2019. I was working on a thesis about old cemetery architecture and heritage sites, so I traveled across various provinces, including Ilocos. A local friend suggested I check out a lesser-known cemetery near a remote barangay. It was old Spanish-era style, with moss-covered crypts and cracked headstones dating back to the 1800s. It was late afternoon when I arrived. The light was golden, and the whole place had this eerie calm about it. Not scary, just unusually quiet. No birds, no dogs barking, just the wind brushing through the dry grass. I was taking pictures, sketching a few arches and grave markers when I saw him. There was someone sitting on top of the stone perimeter wall, at the far end of the cemetery. He wasn't moving, just sitting still, legs dangling over the side. From a distance, I thought maybe it was a teen or vagrant. I waved to get his attention, no reaction. I started walking closer. As I moved in, the air felt heavier, like walking underwater, and that's when I noticed something strange. He had no face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth dark skin, almost like burnt wood. Yet somehow I could feel him staring. I stopped walking. He tilted his head slowly, like he was curious, or deciding something. I didn't wait to find out what. I turned and walked quickly toward the exit, but I couldn't help myself. I looked back. He was gone. I scanned the wall, empty. Then I heard it. Thud. Something heavy dropped to the ground behind me. I spun around. There was no one there, but the dust was still rising, like someone had just jumped down from the wall. I ran. I didn't look back again until I was at the road. My hands were shaking too much to hold my camera. Later that night, I told the caretaker at my inn about what I saw. His face went pale. "You saw him," he said quietly, "the Tagatanid." I asked what that meant. He told me the story, an old tale passed down through generations. Long ago, a man was buried alive by accident during a fever epidemic. He clawed at his coffin, screaming, unheard, until he died. After his death, people claimed to see a figure watching the cemetery at dusk, always on the walls, never inside, never resting. They say he watches to make sure no one escapes their graves again, and punishes those who disturb the dead. I asked if it's common to see him. The old man only said, "If you see him once, he sees you forever." I haven't been back to Ilocos since, but sometimes, late at night, I feel that same heavy silence, and I wonder if the Watcher is still watching me. The Silent Grave Digger, Pampanga Public Cemetery. This happened back in 2015 when my uncle died in Pampanga. Our family had to arrange everything fast, and since we didn't have a private lot, we buried him in a public cemetery just outside town. We went there early in the morning to prepare the site. The caretaker told us to wait for the gravedigger, but he was running late. Around 9 a.m., this old man showed up, thin, wearing a torn camisa chino, muddy jeans, and a salakot that shaded most of his face. He didn't say a word, just nodded when I asked if he was the digger. He immediately got to work, slow but methodical. My cousin and I offered him water, but he didn't even look up, just kept digging. Around noon, the sun was brutal, so I left to grab food. When I got back an hour later, the grave was done, deep and clean, perfectly shaped, but the man was gone. No tools, no footprints, just the finished grave, as if he vanished. I asked the caretaker where he went. The guy frowned. "Wala pa po yung taga hukay," he said. I stared at him. "What do you mean? He was just here, dug the whole grave." The caretaker shook his head. "Impossible. That grave shouldn't be ready till tomorrow." Then he pulled out an old photo from the chapel wall. "Ito poeng amako, he dug graves here for 40 years. I felt my chest tighten. It was him, the same man, same face, same salakot. "But he passed away in 2005, the caretaker said, voice low, right on that spot while digging. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his hands, muddy, bony but steady, digging, as if still finishing work from a life that never really ended. To this day, I believe some souls keep working long after they're buried, especially when no one ever thanked them. So, the next time you pass by a quiet cemetery and see someone digging alone, don't forget to ask, are you supposed to be here, or are you still finishing your work from the grave? If that story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more real and terrifying encounters, right here on Creep Tales. We've got more, waiting in the dark.